How's it going, everybody? I am Kyle from Fantasy Forge Studios.
And I'm Dane from Fantasy Forge Studios.
And we are here with the final part of the set review for the Heroes of the West. We will be going over the multi-element cards. There's only 4, and all of the items and arts that are in this game to kind of help support your creatures out on the battlefield. Without further ado, we can go ahead and just jump right in. And so, with this being the Heroes of the West, these next couple of cards are going to be a big focus on kind of one of the primary characters in this region. We can go ahead and pull up the map here real quick. During all of the elements from Calum down here to Helix here, all the way to Shiloh and Roinville and all of the places, we are going to be heading back to Helix specifically. So the capital city of New Drulican, which is right here. And our first character is going to be dun, 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 Alexander the Third, King of Helix. He is a beast, and he is a multi-type. And so the way that dual types work in this game, while Alexander the Third, King of Helix, is a supporter category creature, when you rotate him into the activated position in order to generate mana, you can choose to generate with his types being Frost and Light, either a Frost type or a Light type mana. And so he's really great for basically decks that are multi-element, specifically for the Frost and Light. If you are running a multi-element creature that is an attacker, for example, when you attack another creature, it hits that creature with both elements. And you might see, for example, down here at the bottom that, let's just say the Frost element hits the opposing creature for weakness, but they are resistant because they're a multi-element creature to the Light element, for example. Then what you do is you always, so again, will be in the FAQ, you always apply resistance first before weakness. And so you take the damage, whatever that is, reduce it by 20, and then you multiply it by 2. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's not very common for sure, but that's how it would be applied if you did. And if you also look at the specific card, for example, King Alexander the Third, King of Helix, he is a Frost and a Light element type. So this weakness will always correspond to this specific typing right here, and then this resistance will always apply to, or this typing will always apply to the resistance. So you may be asking, what does the order matter on the card, what the dual typing is? Yes, it does, because that's how it correlates to weakness and resistance of the creature.
And you'll see it in the upcoming cards. There are a total between the Raising of Helix and the Heroes of the West of 4 total cards, or 8 total cards that have that. And so you'll see that it correlates that way. But without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce King Alexander the Third, or Alexander the Third, King of Helix. He is a really, really thick primary type, supporter type. And so he is similar to Eska, where he has the 100 hit points just based off, and he has the Captain, Humanoid, human, and Helix keywords, and so he's great for Helix decks. His synergies really work perfectly in a multi-element Frost Light deck, and we have seen, going over those 2 elements, that they're all based off of Helix, and basically all the cards in those have the Helix keyword. But he is a support category creature, and he has the drop ability Lord of Helix, which says when you play this creature from your hand onto your battlefield, all of your active creatures with the Helix keyword, excluding this creature, at 30 hit points to their maximum hit point totals, which means it's not a trait, so it's not always applied whenever creatures with the Helix keyword are on it, but basically all of your creatures at the time that this card is played onto your battlefield gain that 30 hit points to their maximum hit point total, and it cannot be removed in any way.
Unless damage is taken.
Unless the damage is taken, but like, for example, they can heal back up to that maximum amount as well, so it doesn't just revert back to their regular healing. But yeah, and then once they are slain, then that's when it resets, or when it's removed from the battlefield in any way.
Cool. If you decide to forego activating him for mana, whether that be a Frost or Light mana, you could choose to spend a Frost and Light mana in the movement phase for Inspiring Leader. And so this reads, until the end of the turn in the movement phase, you may play any number of primary type creatures with the human keyword from your hand onto the battlefield. So this is really strong, considering you can only play 1 primary type creature per turn. So this allows you, if you have him in your deck, and you're running a human deck specifically, to play as many humans from your hand onto the battlefield as you would like.
Which human is the most populous keyword right now? At least kind of a little bit more focused in. Humanoid is definitely more, but human for the type of race that is out there, that's the most populous. And so having him is really good for just if you have a loaded hand of getting primaries down onto your battlefield. So he's great. He's really good. But he promotes into our one of our final two heroes of the set, and my personal favorite card, and actually the heroes of the West, Alexander the Third, King of Helix EX.
Yeah, and so as you can see, he's got 130 HP, which is nothing to scoff at. He is an EX, meaning that if he is slain, then you take 1 point to your life point total, so you have to take 1 point. However, he's very strong. He has 130 HP. He is still a support type creature, and he gains the hero, captain, humanoid, human, and helix keyword. Keep in mind, you can only have one hero on the battlefield at any given time, so he would be your hero if you decide to have him. He does have the drop ability, Descendant of Ingold Asphodel. Did I say that right?
Yep.
I think I said that right. But basically, when you play this creature from your hand onto your primary king, Alexander the Third, reveal all of your remaining life points cards from the for the remainder of the game. Meaning you can flip them over, and you can choose and pick and choose moving forward, which is kind of nice. So that's just his drop when you play him from your hand. So you can play him as early or late as you like.
Yep, and the way that the life points look on a battlefield is off to your left. You can see you have up to 8 life points that you potentially can have. If you have all 8 life points at the time that this card is played, you flip all 8 of them. Mm-hmm. And so you and your opponent will have the ability to be able to see what is there, which is really nice, actually. He is very unique, where he's the only person that actually really messes with life points as far as that goes. Mm-hmm. But he does have the same inspiring leader, so if you choose to forego activating him to generate mana, basically you can, for 1 frost, 1 light mana, you get until the end of the combat, until the end of your turn in the movement phase, you may play any number of primary type creatures with the human keyword from your hand onto your battlefield. So it's the exact same.
Cool. And if you decide to use his EX activate again, you can only use it once per game for this specific creature. And it will cost 1 frost mana, 1 light mana, and then 1 colorless mana. So just mana in general. You can use any element for that. And you can use Restore Order. So shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 10 cards. So it's a super powerful hand reshuffle, essentially.
Yep,
so.
and really great draw power. This would be good in decks that synergize with cards that like focus on like how big your hand size is. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's really good. And again, let's just take one last look at this beautiful EX before we put him away.
So good,
so good.
Love that artwork.
My favorite. But then we go into our last creature in the Heroes of the West, or at least last creature line, which is Emmerich Guildmaster. So he has 90 hit points. He is also a support category creature. He is a captain, humanoid, elf, high tower, adventurer, and scholar keywords. Mm-hmm. So he works really good in scholar decks. And as you can see, his typing is going to be earth and electric typing. And so yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of weird. Like, he has a weakness to like his own typing, electric, but he does have a resistance to also his own typing, which is the earth element, which is interesting. But he has the drop Master of the Adventurers Guild, and so when you play this creature from your hand onto your battlefield, rotate all of your active creatures with the Adventurer keyword from the activated position in the unactivated position. So that's really good for resetting your primarily supports, or if your opponent went first and it did a lot of work in doing things to activate your creatures. This guy basically, as long as they have the adventure keyword, they go all unactivated, and so you can either use them again to reflip or like regenerate mana, use support actions, or even later use them in the attack phase.
Yep. Super good. If you decide to forego activating him for mana, earth or electric mana, you can decide to use Hero of Might, and it uses 1 earth and 1 electric mana. So as a support action, choose one of the following 2 effects. The first effect, choose one of your opponent's active creatures and deal it 40 damage. So as a support type creature, that's really good. Support type creatures, there's not a lot of them that can deal damage, and this deals damage in the movement phase. So that's pretty solid, especially for only 2 energy or 2 mana. That's super solid. Or you could decide to not shuffle your deck, but get cards in your hand. You can decide to draw 3 cards if you'd like.
One thing to note about that first option, it's you choose one of your opponent's active creatures. So it doesn't matter where this is placed. You can target any of your opponent's active creatures, but it cannot be used to target life points. So that's the big thing. It has to be a creature.
Cool.
And he promotes into our last EX creature, which is Emmerich Guildmaster.
Yeah, so he is also an EX creature. He has 120 HP. And again, since he's an EX creature, if he gets slain, you take a life point. However, he has the hero, captain, humanoid, elf, hightower, adventurer, and scholar keywords. Whew, all the keywords that he's got, but that's really good. He does have a trait, expert adventurer. So as long as he is active on your battlefield, at the start of each combat round, flip a coin for each of your active creatures with the adventurer keyword. On the result of a heads, draw a card or shuffle 1 random card from your discard pile back into your deck. So you could do it's a trait, so you can do this at any given time, and it's awesome. It's super good, and especially in adventure decks, he's going to be a staple.
Yep, he's basically going to be your leader in adventure decks, and you're going to be piling all kinds of adventures around him, and he is going to go crazy. But yeah, he also has the Master of the Blade, which is you can essentially use him instead of rotating him into the activated position to generate either earth or electric mana. You could use him to just deal 60 damage to one of your opponent's active creatures. So he loses the ability to draw 3 cards, but that's kind of replaced a little bit in his trait, especially if you have a bunch of adventurers on your battlefield, and he just gets more potent. 60 damage can one-shot a huge variety of pretty much just primary like warrior type creatures that are out there. So it's really, really good.
Yep. He also has an EX activate. So again, if you decide to forego using him for mana, you can decide to use Guild Master's Influence for 2 earth and 2 electric mana. So it's kind of hefty. However, if you have 6 or more active creatures with the adventure keyword on your battlefield, deal 2 points of damage to your opponent's life point total. So that's very cheap damage to a life point total. So it seems expensive, but it's super good. And again, staple in adventure decks. Once you get a bunch of adventurers out, this is one of those activates, EX activates. Why not use? Just use it.
Absolutely. A little thing about kind of the lore of Emmerich. So Emmerich is a Hightower elf. So if we look on our map here, that's going to be off. Oh boy, he's behind. Right here in this area right here on the map, it is the main high elf city, but he is a kind of like a retired military elf, and he is now the leader of the Adventurers Guild, a new guild that has been made in the 3rd Age of Everlast that basically gathers adventurers from far and wide to be able to do all the tasks that an Adventurers Guild would do, helping out the locals and the populace of the city, where he currently is in this basically expansion is the very first Adventurers Guild, which was established in Helix. And so that's why he is in the Heroes of the West.
Pretty cool. Good job. I like that specifically these 2 characters for Heroes of the West. They're 2 amazing characters, and I'm really excited that they are in the TCG.
Yeah, good NPCs that you will absolutely encounter during your adventures in the tabletop RPG. But we are going to be moving into now our items and arts. So a really quick thing to kind of mention. So we have basically 3 kinds of item cards. We have gear cards, which basically when you play them, you can attach them sideways onto your creature. And so they stay for as long as either it's activated or until removed by the effects of cards or the creature is removed from your battlefield. And so those are the only ways that you can remove them. You cannot replace them with gear items. So if they have a gear item, you cannot replace the gear item with another gear item. You have to just be careful how you play them. There are also field cards, which go into your field zone, and you'll see some field cards there. You have where on the kind of the right hand side there, the field card area right there, and you essentially basically flip a D or roll a D4, and for that many combat rounds, that card is active. It cannot be targeted by attacks or anything like that. It's just basically a passive effect that is in effect while that field card is in play for the amount of turns. And so make sure you have a D4 to mark how many combat rounds that it remains active. And then our last one are going to be consumables, which are basically as soon as you use the effects of it, you just discard it, essentially. And so there's going to be probably few more consumables than maybe gear cards, and there's going to be even fewer field cards in that space. But this is going to be our first one, which is Broadsword, which is a gear card. So you can only have one gear item card attached to a creature at a time, as we can see in the gear rule, and as mentioned, it is item with the gear keyword.
And so what it does is when you attach this gear to a creature, when the creature this gear item is attached to makes a single target attack action, deal 10 damage to the creatures on both spaces to the left and right of the primary target as secondary targets. So it's really especially good if you are attacking creatures that hit one single target, because it allows them to do some spread damage. It's only 10 damage, but it's 20 extra damage is nothing to scoff at.
And for example, we have seen in certain cards, such as the Helix Farmer or the Helix, or not the Helix, the Shiloh Farmer, or basically the Shiloh Militia. It's their trait allows them to stack based off of the number of creatures with Shiloh or a human or Shiloh in the basically on your battlefield, and that includes, it's not specific about primary target, and so this can actually stack with similar effects like that. And so this gets bumped up from 10 to 20 to 30 based off of how many. And so it could be used in conjunction with maybe some other cards to also increase that 10 damage limit as well. Which brings us into our first consumable, the Earth Tome.
Yeah, so there's Tome consumable. It is an item card, and the effect says choose one of your active creatures and move it one space in any direction into an unoccupied space. So it's really good because it allows you to kind of move your creatures around, especially if they have ran out of movement.
So it's in addition to the movement that you have. And so if you have a creature that's like a support or defender type that can only move one, they can move two with this. Or if it's an attacker, they can move three instead of two. And they have the additional effect as well that if the chosen creature is an earth type creature, you can move two spaces instead of one. So essentially
super solid.
Yep. Very cool. It's definitely used in, I think, a lot of earth element decks for some decent maneuverability, which brings us to our Frost Tome. It is a consumable, and it is another item card. And essentially what it is move 20 damage. So when you play this from your hand, move 20 damage from one of your active creatures to one of your opponent's active creatures. So it's a way to transfer damage over to your opponent, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, it also has the additional effect. If the chosen creature that you removed damage from is a frost element creature, the target gains the frozen status element until the end of the combat round. And frozen's super strong. So basically, frozen stops them from doing anything. They can't move, they can't activate, they can't do anything. Yep. They're pretty much stuck. So frozen's super solid, and actually I do have a frost element deck that I've been using, and I run a 3-line of these. It's super good.
Yep. Absolutely. Like pretty much if you're running like a Helix deck at this point, or you can even use these because they're not locked behind a like an alignment. You can use them in for example, Nazra God decks in the Raising of Helix as well. They're very, very nice for Frost type decks. And then we have our very first art card, which are powerful magic effects that use basically the Spirit of Alomnia to do a little bit more than what a typical item card would do, which is going to be Glimmer.
Yeah, so you can only use one of these per turn. And so there may be cards later on that come out that allow you to use multiple art cards, but as far as the art rule goes, you can only use one art per turn.
On your turn in the movement phase.
In the movement phase, exactly. And so, yes, so Glimmer, as Kyle said, pretty simple. Shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 3 cards. So it's a pretty powerful reshuffle of your hand.
And even just draw 3 cards. Let's just say you have 1 card in your hand and you're just like, oh, I just need a little bit more. I'm looking for this one hit. Or like as Dane had mentioned, if you just need to shuffle your deck, if you're just not drawing what you want, it's a pretty decent way to just get your deck moving a little bit and to refresh your hand, which is good.
Glimmer.
And that brings us to our next art, which is going to be Gust. Again, you can only play one of these from your hand per combat round. And I guess we could just kind of take turns going off based off of one at a time. So I'll start with Gust. You can do the next card.
Perfect.
Which is, so this is a manic art, and it has the effect: choose one of your opponent's active creatures that is not in the guard position. So if your opponent has a defender type creature rotated sideways into the guard position, you cannot target it, but move it to an unoccupied space on their battlefield. So you can just move it anywhere you want during your turn in the movement phase. So it's really good, especially if you're going second, because basically if you have your opponent who kind of set their battlefield up one way and you just move them out of the way using Gust, like it's the way that, like, if I could relate it to, like, in Pokemon terms, it would be the Pokemon catcher of this. So, pretty good.
Yep.
Which brings us to our next card.
Light's Tome. So this is an item card, consumable. So again, you use it and then you discard it as soon as you use it. But search your deck for 2 creatures that have 80 hit points or less. Reveal them to your opponent and add them to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So again, this is super, super good, especially if you're looking for creatures. Again, one of the easiest ways to lose is by not having creatures on your battlefield. This allows you to search for 2 creatures with 80 hit points. However, if the creature, the additional effect is if the creature that you searched for is a light element creature, there's no hit point limit to search for that creature. So you could literally search for any light type creatures in your deck. It does not matter. And so you can get EX cards, you can get higher level or higher HP promoted cards. It doesn't limit you. So it's very good. Again, this is another staple in light type decks.
Absolutely. Which brings us to our first field card. So it's an item field, and with the rule, roll a d4 and then basically for a number of combat rounds equal to the result. Place this card, or until it is replaced by. So this is unlike gear cards. You can actually replace your active field cards with a new field card in play during your turn in the movement phase. But you put it into your field zone, and it basically gives the effect to you and your opponent potentially, which will specify on each card for the time being. And so it'll be there. So you roll a d4, then you put like a d4 counter on it depending on what your result is. So it could be anywhere from basically until the end of this combat round or up to 4 combat rounds. But it has the effect once per combat round. At the start of the combat round, flip a coin. On the result of a heads, add 1 mana of any element type to your mana pool. So it's not a basically like a basic mana. It is, you get to choose an element type, and then you can add that to your mana pool, which is really nice. It gives you basically just a little bit of extra mana to your mana pool, but also it's great for multi-element decks as well.
Yep. I know Max, one of our playtesters, runs that in one of his decks.
And that brings us to our next art.
Yeah, so Magma Blade. Magma Blade's pretty cool. I was talking to Kyle a little bit before we started streaming this. We think it's a sleeper. It's definitely a sleeper. But basically, this manic art, what it allows you to do is when you play this card when you play this card from your hand, until the end of the combat round, all of your active flame element creature card attacks actions deal an additional 20 points of damage to the primary target creature. So especially if you're running flame element decks,
that already hit hard to begin with.
Yeah, already hit hard to begin with. Every single one of your flame elements attack actions deal extra damage. So a really solid buff for everyone.
Yep, and it's, again, until the end of the combat round. So it doesn't just apply to one creature, it's all of those creatures, which is awesome. But then we have another manic art that we have, which is mana mending. And so it does have a cost of 1 basic mana. So any mana can fulfill this to use mana mending. But essentially what it is heal 80 hit points to one of your active creatures. So it's a very simple, strong heal.
Yep.
Not much more to say about it. All right, and we have our next gear item.
Next gear item. So again, when you attach this gear to a creature on your battlefield, while this gear item is attached to a creature, when the creature receives damage from your opponent's attack actions, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, reduce damage received by 40 damage. So basically, it allows you to use extra cards in your hand to reduce damage to you. So 40 damage is quite a bit of damage to reduce. I know there's cards in the other sets that reduces more with less cost. However, most times you have a card in your hand that you don't necessarily need all that much. So this is great if you want to just reduce 40 damage.
You can also run it in a deck, the plate armor in a deck where that utilizes like you want to get things into your discard pile because you may have cards or creatures that play out of your discard pile. This is an awesome card for those types of decks.
Yep. And it looks cool.
It does look real nice. And that brings us to our next card, which is an item consumable called Rations. This one is, I think, going to be a staple in most decks. I think a lot of decks are going to be running, if not a 2-line of this, a 3-line of it. But essentially what it is choose one. When you play this card, choose one of your active creatures in the activated position and flip a coin. If the result is heads, rotate the chosen creature into the unactivated position. So you can use this for activated creatures that have that you use to generate mana. You can use this if, for example, your opponent used a card like Debilitating Ray or something to basically activate one of your creatures, your attacking creatures. You can do that. You can use it with creatures that have kind of, when you play them, primary creatures onto your battlefield, you have to play them into the activated position. You can then use this card potentially to move them into the activated position on turn 1, kind of giving them like a pseudo haste ability. It's really, really nice, and there's lots of use for this.
Yep. Every deck that I've played, I run Rations. So, and then we have another gear item card, and that is Shield. So as I had mentioned, we have other defending type gears that you can attach to your creature. So while this gear item is attached to a defender type creature, reduce all damage against it by 20 while it is in the guard position. So again, the stipulation is it has to be a defender type creature in the guard position, but it's thicker while it's in the guard position, just reduces damage by 20.
Yeah, and absolutely, we've seen cards, for example, the Earth Golem, which when it is in the guard position anyways, it reduces damage, and it's a defender type. It reduces damage by 40. This would allow it to reduce damage by 60. So there's a lot of synergy with a lot of defender type cards, giving them a little bit more survivability and incentive to use them to block up spaces in the combat lane. And that brings us to our next card, which is the Spear. So this is kind of like the vertical use of Broadsword. And so it is a gear item which has the effect when the creature that this gear item is attached to makes a single target attack action, deal 20 damage to the creature in the space behind the primary target as a secondary target. And so it has the effect where you boop a target, and then you can boop the creature behind them as well. It's really nice. It says so instead of a horizontal, it's a kind of like a vertical attack pattern.
Cool. Okay, so our next consumable item is the Steel Ingot. So search your deck for a gear item card, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So again, this is one of the staple searches if you're looking for gear items to attach to your cards. Pretty simple.
Yep, pretty darn simple.
Also, you get to shuffle your deck, which is kind of nice.
Exactly, and I believe that this is in a couple of the EX battle decks as well. So, pretty good. And then that brings us to our next field card, which is the Kingdom of Helix. Hey!
Whoa.
Does it look familiar?
Whoa.
Whoa.
It's like you're in the Kingdom of Helix right now, Kyle.
Crazy. But as mentioned, this is a field card, so when you do play it, make sure you roll a d4 to determine how many combat rounds that it is active. But while it is in effect, once per combat round, at the top of the combat round, select one of your active creatures to apply this field card's effects to. Until the end of the combat round, all damage done to the selected creature is reduced by 20. And so basically you can extra buff up one of your creatures, whether it's defender, attacker, or supporter type creatures, to reduce all damage to it by 20.
This card's really strong in a Princess Irea and Victor deck.
For sure.
Yep.
And that brings us to our next field card.
Yeah, so Willowwood Park. It's a pretty cool place in Shiloh with lizards and children. But the field card, so again, roll that d4, see how many turns it lasts, but it actually is the first field card with 2 effects. So apply both of the following effects. So the effect that is applied to your opponent At the end of the combat round, if your opponent has 6 or more cards in their hand, they must discard cards until they have 5 cards left in their hand. So it prevents your opponent from having massive hand. And then it also gives you a benefit, which is kind of nice. So at the end of the combat round, if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, discard cards until you have 7 cards left in your hand. So, yeah. So I guess technically it keeps your hand also smaller, but it also
How many times though do you have like 8 cards in your hand?
it's not a lot. Basically, it's really meant to cripple the opponent's hand size.
I think of it this way: if you're using, for example, the EX activate for example, King Alexander the Third, and you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 10 cards, you have to utilize the cards in your hand. Otherwise, you're discarding. Your opponent's discarding cards, potentially 5 of those cards that you've used your EX activate on. Yep. So. It's good. It's definitely really good for those ones that really rely on high
hand sizes.
Yeah, high hand sizes as well, for sure. Which takes us into our next art, which is Aurora Veil. This is another really good kind of defensive art. It is a manic art, and it has the effect until the end of the combat round, your active creatures cannot be affected by status ailments. This art does not remove active status ailments, and so it doesn't just refresh everything if something is frozen or if something is stunned or charmed or whatever the case. It doesn't remove poison, but it keeps new effects to be added. And there are a lot of cards who, whether they're their attack actions or support actions that act, or even if your opponent has cards, for example, I can think of like Poison Vial in the Master Assassin deck, where you could just boom poison a creature. This basically prevents all that shenanigans this combat round.
Okay, so our next manic art. So again, you can only use one of these per turn in the movement phase, and it is Charge. So these are actually in the Shiloh EX battle deck, and they're very strong, especially if you can get one right away. Basically, discard the top 5 cards of your deck. Add 2 electric mana to your mana pool for each electric element creature discarded in this way. So yes, kind of sucks discarding creatures. However, if you can get a couple creatures discarded in this way, from turn 1 or turn 2, you can be pretty much set up mana-wise to be able to really do a lot during the first couple turns.
Especially if you have creatures that have a pretty low attack costs, you'll be able to put out a bunch of attacks within the first 2 combat rounds, as long as you have a bunch of mana. Pretty much the name of the game is generating as much mana as fast as possible from the very beginning. And so this does have actually a 3-line in a lot of electric decks. But it's, again, completely up to you how you want to use it, if you want to generate it the old-fashioned way. But this does help electric decks get going a little bit. And that brings us to Damascus Ingot. This is going to be a consumable item. So when one of your active creatures receives damage in any way, so this is one of those few cards with a stipulation that it's not necessarily played during your turn in the movement phase. This is a reactionary card. So again, it has the specific wording that allows you to do that. When one of your active creatures receives damage in any way, you may play this card. As long as the chosen creature has a gear item attached to it, reduce the received damage by 30. And so, again, this can stack with something like plate armor, things like that further reduces damage. It's, again, another defensive card.
Which brings us to another manic art, and it is Haste. So Haste is a really strong ability. It does cost 2 mana, any mana, so this could be used in any deck. So for 2 no type mana, you can use Haste. So until the end of the combat round, all creatures that you play onto your battlefield gain the Haste drop ability. Additionally, add 1 to your value, or 1 to the value of your priority initiative roll at the start of the next combat round. So again, this is good if you if you want to go first in the next combat round, but also Haste. Kyle, do you want to explain Haste?
Yeah, so Haste is a drop ability which allows you to, when you play a primary creature from your hand onto the battlefield, it's not placed in the activated position, but rather in the unactivated position. So it's basically makes your creatures fast.
Yep, it's really good. And that's pretty cheap for that.
Exactly. And then again, it could be put in any deck because it is just the basic mana. You can use any mana to be able to activate it. Which brings us to our next consumable item card, which is Healing Herbs. And it's got the simple effect, heal 30 hit points to one of your active creatures. So it's kind of small heal. We did already see the Mana Mending, which heals 80 damage to one of your active creatures. But you can use up to 3 of these per combat round because it is not an art. And so it has a smaller effect, but it's pretty good for just keeping smaller creatures or even keeping your bigger creatures healthy.
Which brings us to Mana Crystal Earth type. So these are really cool. So between the two sets, Raising Helix and Heroes of the West, mana crystals are going to be introduced. They're really strong consumables, and basically what you do is you roll a d4 and add Earth mana to your mana pool equal to the rolled value. So you could either add just immediately 4 mana to your Earth, all the way down to 1 mana, or 1 Earth mana to your mana pool. So it's very strong. It's a good way to be able just to generate mana and keep your decks going.
At this point, I'm thinking as far as our mana crystals go, there are going to be 3 lines in pretty much every deck as long as you got the room for them. These are probably going to be prioritized, especially because you might want to use the effects of your support creatures, or maybe you're dwindling on support creatures. Like these can potentially net you 4 mana on a good roll, which is awesome.
And they're consumable, so you can use as many of them as you like per turn.
Exactly, which brings us to our next one, which is the Mana Crystal Frost, which is, again, roll a d4, add Frost mana to your mana pool equal to the rolled value. And that brings us to our last of them in this set.
Yeah, the Mana Crystal Light. So roll a d4, add light mana to your mana pool equal to the roll value. So super good.
Yeah, these guys are awesome. The arts are amazing on them as well. And use them to your own wealth. I have a hunch that a lot of people will be going back to Heroes of the West and Raising of Helix specifically for these cards for their deck. These can pretty much be put in any deck, which is very useful. And that takes us to meal rations. So we've already seen rations before, but these are meal rations. They are consumable item card, and it is discard your hand. Choose up to 3 of your active creatures in the activated position and rotate them into the unactivated position. So at the cost of discarding your hand and no coin flip, you can just unactivate 3 of your active creatures. So I don't think that this is going to see a lot of 3 lines. Perhaps maybe, just because having no cards in your hand, that's not super fun, to be honest. But if you have everything that you need and your basically battlefield is set up and all you need is creatures that are activated in order to do stuff, this is your card to be able to do that. So maybe 1, maybe 2 of these in your deck are useful. You might find use for 3, who knows, but yeah, it's a pretty good card. And doesn't that meat look delicious?
Oh yeah, nice. And that cheese too. We do have a consumable, Remedy. So this is nice because basically you can discard your hand. It's another discard your hand. However, remove all status ailments from one of your active creatures. So especially if you're playing decks that inflict status conditions and cripple you, this is just a free, I mean not free, you discard your hand, but it's a really good way to remove status ailments.
Absolutely. And it remove all status ailments because each creature can have up to 2 status ailments active on them at a time. It's kind of one of those rules that I think often get overlooked in the game, is you can have 2 status ailments at a time. So a creature could be poisoned and it could be frozen. It can have all of these types of things. And so this allows you to remove everything from them. So it's very strong from one creature. That's something specific. So, and then we have Heavenly Smite. I love the art on this card too. This looks so good. But it is a manic art card, and it does have a mana cost for 2 light and 2 basic mana. You get Heavenly Smite, which has basically, it's an attacking art, and so it has this cross pattern with 80 damage to the primary target, which is going to be the target furthest in front, and you can choose what target that is, and then it hits 50 to all the secondaries, but it says you may choose any of your opponent's active creatures to be the primary target of this art. After resolving the effects of this art, remove this card from the game. You cannot use it to target life points. You can only use it to target creatures. And so you can't just easily, willy-nilly use it as like, I want to target my opponent's life points. It doesn't work like that. So arts can only target creatures.
Unless specified.
That's true. Unless specified.
Yeah.
There's always going to be rules that can be broken in this or future sets.
And now we are moving on to our artifact cards. So artifact cards are super powerful items and that you can only have one of in your deck. So it's not like you can have one of many different artifacts. You can only have one artifact. And Nathali Rations is a super good one. So it is a consumable, so you may play it during your movement phase. But basically, its effect is rotate all of your active creatures in the activated position into the unactivated position. Remove this card from the game. So this is really good. Again, it's just if you have a full battlefield, you could just pop down to Nathali Rations and generate mana and just activate everything. This card I run in most of my decks as my artifact. So
Yeah, it's pretty darn strong. But we do get into our next artifact, which is the Pure Mana Crystal. There is a typo on this card, so it says roll a d4. It's actually roll a d6. And so roll a d6 and add basic mana to your mana pool equal to the rolled value. Meaning you can have up to d6, and if you did purchase the tokens from the Kickstarter, we do have basic mana, which is again used for anything. And on our playmats too, we have a space where you have this basically basic mana that can be used for any element. And so yeah, you can generate that, which is this card is going to be very strong for decks that utilize like multi-element or even just regular just mono element. Just having extra mana is just really, really good. D6 as opposed to D4, which is awesome. Which takes us to the last card of the set.
Yep. Ruffinium Ingot. It is also an artifact, so it is a consumable. So when one of your active creatures receives damage in any way, you may play this card. As long as your chosen creature has a gear item attached to it, reduce the received damage by 100. Remove this card from the game. So it's a super, super powerful defensive block for a creature that has a gear item on it.
Yep, it's basically Damascus Ingot, just improved. So you will use this if like you really powerful creature or something you're relying on is getting whacked real hard. You basically just be like, and you have activated my trap card, and then you play this, and then it just reduces by 100 damage. It's really good. And Ruffinium in the world of Everlast is the strongest metal material that there is, and so hopefully it's reflected in that. But again, it is an artifact. But that is all of the cards. Thank you so much for joining us for all of these. What is this? 7 weeks of going through the Heroes of the West cards, and we have done so. So if you have missed any of them, go back to our YouTube channel. That's where we post all of our basically content for the Everlast TCG and all of the creature elements, and including it's good reference material for FAQs, and also just knowing what to do and a little bit of strategy with some of the cards once you do receive them. But that is going to do it for us for now. Tune in a few minutes for our Raising of Helix, basically final set review for the multi-element cards and then items and art cards. And until then, may you guys have an amazing one, and we'll see you on the other side. Bye, everybody.